Hello and good morning, everyone, including our esteemed guests and members of the Young Citizens of the World community. I am honored to welcome you all to this special and important Zoom. My name is Chris Ford, and I'm hosting this meeting from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in Treaty 6 territory, which is in western central Canada, just north of Montana. And today, Young Citizens of the World has the incredible opportunity to engage in a conversation with two remarkable individuals who have dedicated themselves to driving social change and promoting the urgent cause of gun safety. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Shannon Watts, the inspiring founder of Moms Demand Action, and Helena Spigner, a passionate advocate from Students Demand Action. Shannon Watts has been an instrumental force in mobilizing mothers and concerned citizens across America to work towards ending gun violence. As the founder of Moms Demand Action, she has galvanized millions, and I think we're up to 10 million, is that correct? Unbelievable. 10 million people to advocate for common sense gun laws and create safer communities for our children. Shannon's relentless determination and tireless advocacy have made her a leading voice in the movement for gun safety. Joining Shannon is Helena Spigner, an exceptional young leader representing Students Demand Action. Helena has demonstrated remarkable courage and drive in the pursuit of a future free from gun violence. Through her activism, she has inspired countless students to raise their voices and demand, and I believe get action and change in their schools and communities. Helena's dedication to empowering the youth and driving meaningful action is truly commendable. Today's conversation will provide us with unique insights into their experiences, their perspectives, and the collective efforts that have made Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action such influential forces in the fight for gun safety. We will have the opportunity to learn from their wisdom, hear from their stories, and discover how we can all play a part in creating a safer world for future generations. So, on behalf of Young Citizens of the World, I extend my deepest gratitude to Shannon and to Helena joining us today. Your work has served as an inspiration to us, and we are honored to have this opportunity to engage in this meaningful dialogue. So, let us embrace this conversation with open hearts and minds as we learn from those who champion the cause of gun safety and advocate for a brighter future. Teachers in various countries are joining us live, and many more schools around the world will be watching the recorded interview in class in weeks to come. So today's questions are coming from Blessed Sacrament School in Vancouver, BC, and Cloverdale School in Surrey, BC. And I believe the first question is coming from grade 6 student named Vivian.
What inspired you to start Moms Demand Action? And what was the biggest challenge you faced when starting the organization?
I was a stay-at-home mom of 5 in Indiana. I was afraid that my kids weren't safe in their schools. So I was sort of living in a bubble as a white mom in a suburb. And then when I started Moms Demand Action, really just as a Facebook page, what I started to learn about gun violence is that it is a much more complex issue than just school shootings or mass shootings. In fact, that's about 1% of the gun violence in this country. But I think the Sandy Hook school shooting was a catalyst for so many women in this country to get off the sidelines and to become educated about this issue and to start working on it legislatively, electorally, culturally. We were up against one of the wealthiest, most powerful special interests that's ever existed in this country. But I really did think that women could be the David to the NRA's Goliath. And that's exactly what happened. Over the last decade, our volunteers and gun violence survivors working shoulder to shoulder in communities across the country have really changed the calculus on this issue. There's been a seismic shift in American politics. When I started doing this, about a quarter of all Democrats in Congress had an A rating from the NRA, and today none do. So I was inspired by that tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut in 2012. And I think one of the biggest challenges we faced is that, this powerful special interest had a 30-year head start. And I think sometimes also people come to this work, any kind of activism really, thinking that there will be overnight change. And you just have to educate people about the issue and help them understand that it's complicated, but also that it takes many years of what I call unglamorous grassroots activism, right? The heavy lifting of grassroots activism. And change doesn't happen overnight.
Gradual change and fighting over time. Marvelous. Thank you for doing that. Our next student to ask questions will be asking from Cloverdale Catholic School. And there'll be a couple questions, 3 for Shannon and then a couple for Helena.
Hi, my name is Paige, and I'm a student council member at Cloverdale Catholic School. And my question to you is, how do you work to engage and educate communities about gun safety? And what has been your most successful outreach effort to date?
Thank you for the question. The way we engage in communities is by making sure we have volunteers all across the country, in every community. As you said earlier, we're 10 million strong. And it really has grown quickly. And what's interesting to me is I find that we are most energized in those communities where this work is the hardest. So, for example, in red states where the gun lobby has worked to erode laws that protect public safety is where our volunteers really show up over and over again. And look, I have seen huge change in states where I'm not sure we thought progress was possible a decade ago. I think Virginia is a really good example where in 2019 we were able to elect gun safety majorities in all chambers of the General Assembly plus the governor. And as a result, we passed over a dozen good gun laws in that state. I think some of our biggest successes are changing the makeup of state legislatures, like in Virginia, although we've gone a little bit backwards there. I'm hopeful in this next election cycle, we will have a gun sense majority again. But we elected trifectas in Michigan and in Minnesota. We flipped a chamber in Pennsylvania this last election cycle. Part of the key to that success is electing our own volunteers and survivors to office. We have a program called Demand a Seat, which I am incredibly proud of, where we train our volunteers to run for office and to win. We help them get there because we have this grassroots network of volunteers who can knock doors and get out the vote for them. And in this last electoral cycle, we elected 140 of our own volunteers to office. And that did make a difference in those states where there was a slim majority and we prevailed. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that Lucy McBath, who is a gun violence survivor, she was an airline attendant whose son was shot and killed just weeks before the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy in Florida. And she became an activist after her son Jordan was killed, murdered. And after becoming an activist, she realized she had the skills to be a lawmaker, and now she's a member of Congress. And she's sort of the North Star of our organization.
Hi, my name is Emilia, and I am a student council member at Cloverdale Catholic School. And my question to you is, how do you respond to critics who argue that Moms Demand Action's efforts to reduce gun violence are an infringement to Second Amendment rights?
Thank you for the question. Even the Supreme Court has ruled that all rights can be regulated. The Second Amendment is not meant to be a pact that allows Americans to be shot and killed. It's not meant to overshadow the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. We are seeing more and more people, more and more gun extremists use the Second Amendment as an excuse to intimidate or silence their fellow civilians. So it really has been perverted, the Second Amendment has. It was never meant to be used in the way that it's being exploited right now by a gun lobby. Again, something that we have that no other peer nation has is this very wealthy, powerful special interest that has used their power and wealth to sway elections and to get lawmakers to pass laws that definitely benefit their profits, but endanger public safety. And so this is not an infringement on the Second Amendment. The laws that we support are all constitutional. For example, a red flag law, which the gun lobby opposes and claims doesn't have enough due process, meaning that people have the right to be heard if their guns are being taken away temporarily because they're a danger to themselves or others. In fact, every time these laws, red flag laws, have been challenged in courts, including in very red places like Florida and Indiana, they have been found to be constitutional. So we are not against the Second Amendment. We're not anti-gun. Many of our volunteers are gun owners or their partners are gun owners. There are 400 million guns in this country. We simply want to restore the responsibilities that should go along with gun rights. And the other thing I would say is that there are peer nations that have high rates of gun ownership, and yet they have very low rates of gun violence. And that is because they regulate the guns in their countries. So we can do that too. And we can do that in a way that is constitutionally sound. It protects people's rights, but also protects their safety.
Hi, my name is Stella, and I'm a student council member at Cloverdale Catholic School. My question for you today is, what are some of the most important policies or changes you would like to see enacted to help prevent gun violence in the United States?
Well, we know that the key to any public safety system when it comes to guns is a background check on every gun sale. Right now in this country, licensed dealers are required to perform background checks, but unlicensed sellers are not, meaning at gun shows or personal sales, one-on-one, or even garage sales in some states. So millions and millions of guns are sold every year without a background check in this way. We have closed that loophole in 20 states, but unfortunately, the gun lobby is passing something called permitless carry now in over 24 states, which means you don't have to have a background check or a permit or any safety training whatsoever in order to carry a hidden loaded handgun in public. We know, because data shows us, that states that pass this permitless carry law have more and higher rates of gun violence and gun death. States, mostly blue states, that pass strong gun laws have less gun violence and less gun death. It's pretty intuitive, but the data bears that out. Even law enforcement have opposed laws like permitless carry because they know that they're going to increase the amount of guns stolen from cars and homes. That's how most illegal guns come to be. They know that it's going to endanger their lives. They know it's going to endanger the lives of the people they protect. So that is something that has really eroded the public safety system in this country. Because guns pass over state borders as easily as cars do, we are all only as safe as the closest state with the weakest gun laws. So what we really need are background checks on all gun sales enacted at a federal level. In the meantime, we're going to keep trying to do that state by state and stop the gun lobby's agenda. But there are also other important laws, disarming domestic abusers. We've done that now in 29 states, passing something called the red flag law, which I just was talking about, which basically disarms someone who is a danger to themselves or others temporarily. We've passed red flag laws now in 19 states. We're also passing laws that require people to securely store their firearms. And so it is just sort of these common sense laws that are proven by data. And again, we need these laws at a federal level, but until we have the government and president in place that can do that, we have to do them in school boards, in city councils, and in state houses.
Thank you, Shannon. And I believe now we have 2 questions for Helena Spigner.
Hi, my name is Maylene, and I'm a student council member at Cloverdale Catholic School. And my question for you today is, how did you get involved in Students Demand Action at Vanderbilt University? And what kind of advocacy have you all been involved in recently?
Thank you. Those are really good questions. So I am an education major at Vanderbilt, and I was sitting in my teaching social studies to elementary students class when Covenant happened. And I remember the whole class just going very quiet. And we all sat for a second. And then we decided that we were done. We didn't want to sit in there anymore. So we all got up, we left class early that day. And then the next day, we began to discuss what we wanted to do next, because we, as future educators, don't want to be the security guards for our students. Although we want to dedicate ourselves to our students, we feel like we should also be trained to protect them and fight for them, even though we will when it is necessary. And so after having those discussions, I decided that it was important for me to stand up for what I believe is right and to start advocating. And so that's when I joined Students Demand Action. And since then, we have organized walkouts with 7,000 plus people. We have been at the Capitol week after week, day after day, really advocating for common sense gun laws, trying to prevent permitless carry. And we've been sitting in on legislation, making sure that they know that we're watching them and that we will be holding them accountable.
Hi, my name is Josephine, and I'm a student council member at Cloverdale Catholic School. And my question for you today is, why is it important for young people to get involved in issues like gun violence prevention?
Thank you. So looking back at just the history of social movements, it has always been young people at the front end of it. And I think that's really important for two reasons, especially when it comes to gun violence. One, because we are the most impacted by gun violence. If you look at the data, it shows that children and young teens and people from 25 and younger are their number one reason that they're dying is gun violence. And so it's really something that's happening at our front doors, at our schools, at any point in our life. Like, it is a possibility, and we should not stand for that anymore. As well as when you think about the fact that we're just going to be around a little bit longer. So since we're all so young, we have a lot more life to live. We're going to be the ones impacted most by the laws that are being passed today, because we're going to be around for them longer. And so it's really important that we stand up for what is right and that we keep getting young people involved. And I know, like, at my last rally that I spoke at, I took pictures with girls who were as young as, I want to say 5 and 6. And it was so inspiring to see that these small girls were just out there with their little signs, ready to advocate for change. And they know that this is wrong. And so why should they not? Like, they should be out there advocating just as much as I should, because their voice is just as powerful as mine.
Thanks, Helena. I find it very inspiring what you've been already able to do in a short amount of time. I believe you organized a march in Nashville there, the Moral Monday March, and were able to maybe pressure the government to change their mind on arming teachers to try and defend their schools. And that doesn't seem like the best way to solve this problem. But I do find it very inspiring to see you already, I don't know, as someone who has a tough time just organizing my own life, seeing someone rallying thousands of people into the street. I think that's so amazing. I know for those who are maybe interested in becoming involved, I've seen a number that can be texted in the States as 64433, I believe. And I've seen things like you can text ready, or you can text checks, or you can text students. So is that still the current method of getting involved, or maybe there's other ways? And also, is there anything like that in Canada? Do you know?
I believe that number is correct. I can double check it right now. And I'm not sure about Canada, but I feel like there should be something there. So if there's not, I think it's your turn to start something. I think it's time for you to get up and text some numbers. The number for Students Demand Action looks like it is still. Sorry, my computer is really slow.
Yeah,
the Vanderbilt Wi-Fi
it is.
not
It's
doing
student. It's students to 64433.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And But yeah, in Canada, we don't quite have the same numbers, but it's still a concern and still something that we want to see, contributing, to sane rules and stuff like that. And there's been a lot of anxiety in society in the last couple of years with the pandemic and everything else. And so I know for Shannon, you've mentioned it's about incrementalism that leads to revolutions. And I wonder if in sort of inspiring the hope and the change that you guys have been able to accomplish, I wonder if you could explain that phrase a little bit.
Yeah, I think people get involved in activism often after a national shooting tragedy, and they expect wholesale overnight change. And trust me, I wish that was the way the system is set up. I've been a full-time volunteer now for over 10 years, but it isn't set up for overnight change. It's set up for incremental change, which means you have to find a piece of the work that you're passionate about, roll up your sleeves, and spend some time as an activist. The author Alice Walker, who wrote The Color Purple, once said, "Activism is the rent I pay to live on the planet." And we live in a democracy, which is a huge blessing, but it also is hard work. I have seen that incremental change lead to revolutions. As I mentioned, we've had a seismic shift in American politics where we finally passed the first federal gun safety bill in a generation last summer. And we had 15 Republicans sign on. That would have been unheard of a decade ago. The fact that we've passed over 500 gun safety laws, that we've stopped the NRA's agenda 90% of the time in state houses every year for the last 8 years. That is the hard work of showing up over and over again at every gun bill hearing, at every election cycle to knock doors, at farmers markets to educate people about secure storage. It all adds up like drips on a rock. And eventually you get to a place where you see the hard work that you've done pay off.
It makes a lot of sense. So Shannon and Helena, I want to thank you so much for the hard work that you've been doing and to make our communities safer. I don't want to call it a battle or a war or a fight because I don't really want to evoke the violence that entails. And I don't want to essentially define the people in our community as our enemies. I want us all to try and work together. And I want to thank you, Shannon, for spending years of your life courageously trying to make these changes and replace misinformation and disinformation for actual information and statistical evidence and intelligent thought. And I was looking at some of the stats that you posted on your website, and it's pretty impressive, the lines of here's the laws and here's how safe these states are, and here's the lack of laws and here's how dangerous these states are. And for Helena, I want to thank you as well for continuing this legacy, motivating kids and giving students the tools they need to express themselves effectively and to press the government for laws that make sense. So we're so honored that you guys took the time to be with us today in your busy schedules, I'm sure, and to share your wisdom with the young citizens of the world today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.